Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us today. I'm Alamda Craig, and I have the pleasure of introducing you to Minister Noel Robinson. Thank you very much for being with us.
It's really good to be here. Really good to be here.
So today we are at the Haven event. This is the second year running, and last year was awesome.
Absolutely amazing time last year.
And so one of the things that's been sort of heavy on my mind coming in and preparing for this worship session is how beautiful it is, for us as believers to come together under one roof and give God glory and praise. And that's something that you've done all through your life and your career in ministry. How awesome is it for believers to be together in God's presence?
The Bible talks very much about the assembling together. And people singing songs and spiritual songs, hymns, and unto the Lord. So I think there is something quite significant about believers coming together to worship. In the Bible, we see where there's any significant gathering, there's a significant move of God that brings revelation. So I think that is something that we all should pursue, gathering together.
Yeah. So, in terms of your own career and how music has played a part in your spiritual walk, a lot of people, especially people who've only just recently become saved or who are new to the faith, may not really understand the depth of the importance of worship. Can you just tell us a little bit of how important it is for you and how others as believers should key into that as well?
Well, I would say, if I was to break down the worship, I would say worship is a vehicle, because the most important thing is not worship itself, but actually the most important thing is the presence of God.
Hallelujah.
So the problem that we have in any generation is that we're quite good at articulating the process, or we're quite good at looking at the vehicle. A bit like a chauffeur looks after his car, and his primary concern is to keep that car clean until he receives a phone call from head office saying, please pick somebody up. So his car is ready, always ready to go. But when he picks someone up, the car is no longer important. Actually, the people become very important. And actually, the most important thing then is, where are we going? So the question is, we're going to a destination. In terms of worship, if you looked at it in worship, as worship leaders, that's what I do as a worship leader. It's my primary job to look after the things concerning God, the vehicle, making sure that the vehicle is ready. Practically, we may look at the songs that we sing, the songs that we write, how we express our songs, but nothing actually is more important than arriving at the destination, which is the presence. So we actually spend a lot of time thinking which car is better, which vehicle is better. Well, I like a Maybach, or I like a Mercedes Jeep, or I like a Rolls Royce, or I like a thing. We go through life like that, talking about the vehicles, which are just expressions of
the more important thing.
Well, it's not an expression of the more important thing. It's a vehicle just to get you to the most important thing. So when you start to look at worship in those terms, then you begin to realize that if we constantly always talk about the vehicle and how the vehicle makes us feel, leather seats, reclining seats, all that kind of stuff, then it's kind of obvious that we start majoring on that. But actually, it becomes an idol. And you don't have any idol but God. So the issue is, we don't want to worship.
That's quite insightful, the way that you've broken it down. Thank you very much. And that brings me to my second question, which is about skill in worship. We had a brief chat with the head of the instrumentalist downstairs, and we talked about how skill is important. The Bible says to play skillfully on the harp. How important, over and above, so we're talking about the vehicles. So you can get a regular old car, and you can get a Maybach, and you'll get to the same destination. Is God pleased with my croaky voice, off key? Do I still get into that, element of worship, even if I'm not doing it skillfully?
What's important is your heart. Now, David was called a man after God's own heart. Why? Because he had a worshipping heart. It wasn't because he had a worshipping ability. It wasn't because he could play the right chords. He had a worshipping heart. In actual fact, David was anointed, not his ability. Now, I know some people say, well, you can't have... No. See, the gift of God is given in seed form. The more you practice, the better you become,
Hallelujah.
regardless of who you are. But the chord of God is discovered, the purpose for the gift. Now, God anoints a life. David was anointed. So when he played, anything that he did, it's a bit like spraying aftershave. Everywhere you go, you leave a fragrance. Why? So David's fragrance was, man, he spent time in the presence of God. So when he began to play, his revelation of who God informed the musical notes. And music has a way of containing information and being able to impact people. We can see that in the mainstream world. You write a song like, 'Cause I'm happy. I'm allowed to sing that. As opposed to, here I am to worship. Why am I singing here I am to worship? Because that came from a worshipping heart. When it comes from a worshipping heart, what informs the music is the revelation
Hallelujah.
of who we worship. So we don't worship, but we worship God. And what our music does is aid us. And what we worship with is our heart. It means the woman on the back row who has the croaky voice, and we measure her croaky voice because we have our own standards of what is a good singer and what is a bad singer, whether you're a UK singer or a US singer, or whether you were born in Africa or whether you were born in the Middle East. Right? All those things are human measurements. Human measurements cannot measure the impact of God's presence on someone's heart. But when somebody's heart is engaged, I worship the Lord with all my heart, mind and soul. When they're engaged in a song that's written with a heart, mind and soul to interpret what you see in God, something happens very unique. Faith is engaged. When faith is engaged in worship, so something happens. Faith cometh by hearing, hearing what the word of God. Without faith, it's impossible to please God. So what we're really doing is we're saying this: our heart engaged in seeing who Jesus is and responding to it, whether in a croaky voice or a superbly brilliant voice. What's measured is the heart.